Welcome to the Entrusting the Faith podcast. I'm your host, Eric Rutherford, and I am excited today because I have with me David Goose Mills. He is a retired lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Air Force. He is the founder and director of Men's Alliance, which is a national leadership and discipleship training for Christian men. And he's also the author of Answer with Truth, which equips men with practical apologetics training. Goose, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Eric, or Sage. I call you by your call sign.
Absolutely, yes.
Man, thanks for having me, brother. This is great.
Yeah, I am thrilled. As I've gotten involved with Men's Alliance, I've seen the value of it. And, I just wanted to send you an invite, get you on the podcast because I think what you're doing is impactful. And man, I just want to get it out there to guys and families who either aren't aware or maybe they are aware, but they don't quite get the value of it. So yeah, thrilled to have you on. So let me just start with what led you to starting Men's Alliance. What was that moment where it's like, okay, we got to go this way?
And great question. I was sitting in church service on a Sunday morning, and I'd been going to this church for maybe about 2 or 3 months and wasn't like a member yet, still kind of trying it out, but really liking it. And I'm sitting there looking around the church on a Sunday morning. There's a lot of men. I was like, this is a lot more men at this church than I thought, statistically. And this was, a little over 9 years ago. Statistics have shifted a little since then. That's why I mentioned that. But, predominantly churches are mostly women and children, especially 9 years ago. That's shifting now. But, I was like, this isn't just women and children, man. This is a bunch of like young, healthy, strong, fit dudes. And as I'm sitting there looking around, I'm looking through the bulletin of like the church events and activities, and there's nothing in there for men. There's like all this youth stuff. There's youth this, youth that, youth night, and then a couple women's things. And this was a time in my life, and this is what was really crucial. So I gave my life all in to Jesus January 1st, 2015. I was still 35 years old. I was like 2 months away from my birthday there, 35. Gave my life to Christ, did a 180, and I knew that I needed to surround myself with some strong Christian warriors, some brothers in Christ, in order to stay on this new course. So, I mean, if for anybody who's ever given their life to Christ as an adult, turning from a life of sin, can relate, I'm sure, to this. Once you do that and kind of like get past that initial excitement and high, you start to get this feeling of, I've got myself on a new course now that I cannot afford to ever turn back to the old me. And it can be a little bit scary. It's a bit like walking a tightrope. You're like, I can't ever fail. I can't ever relapse. I can't ever go back to being the old me. How am I going to stay on this new course? How am I going to stay on this new path without ever reverting back to my old life of sin? And, for me, that answer was, I need to not be isolated, not try to do this on my own. I need to surround myself with a band of brothers. So I'm looking around this church and I'm like, man, I got to start something. I got to start the thing that I need. The thing I need, the thing I want, the thing I'm looking for doesn't exist. I got to start it. And I have come a long way, I have to say, in my impulsiveness in these past 9-10 years. I've worked on that. I've gotten less impulsive. But man, I was so impulsive that sitting there that Sunday morning, looking around, looking at the bulletin, having this thought, I walked right up to the pastor as soon as the service ended. I didn't sleep on it. I didn't go home and talk to my wife about it. That's terrible. I would do all those things now. I just walked right up to him and I was like, hey, I'm not a member here and I don't know if that matters or not. I don't know if that's like a showstopper, but I want to start a men's group. And never forget his answer. Great. He's a retired pastor now. His name is Tuck Nupp, and we still get coffee regularly. He said to me, he goes, if some man in this church will start something, I don't care if they're a member or not. He goes, we need men to start some stuff. I'll help you however I can. And
that's awesome.
That yes that I got from him that day, he could have squashed it. He could have discouraged it, but he didn't. He gave me a yes that day. And that changed everything. So I told him, I was like, hey, I'm thinking about, like, I want to do it outdoors. Like, I want to have a men's group that just meets outdoors around a fire and like does a workout first. And he was like, yeah, whatever. Sounds great. And so that's what got the thing started. So I just started this small group at the small church I was attending because it's what I knew I needed in my life. We started a couple of weeks after that conversation. We had 5 guys out there doing a workout devotion around a fire on a Monday night. And that was 9.5 years ago. We're still out there every Monday night doing a workout in Devo around that fire pit. So that's all it started out to be. And then seeing the fact that other men want this same ministry at their church and helping them start it, right? And you and I know there's a lot more to it than just that workout in Devo, right? Like, we got a whole leadership development program. We've got a discipleship training program. We're getting men leading. We're discipling them through our Carry the Fire training course. So we've got all these other things that, honestly, those things develop slowly over time. I didn't roll out all this in the initial blueprint, right? In fact, if God would have shown me that day how far this thing was going to go and how large it was going to become, I probably would have been, frozen with fear and overwhelmed. So thank God he only showed me the next step. But that's the long answer, Sage, to your question.
I love it though, Goose, because you were like, I see an issue and I'm not gonna back off. I'm not gonna hesitate. I'm not gonna fall into analysis paralysis and talk myself out of it. You're just like, hey, well, let's take a step. Let's go talk to him. And then, you took action, which as a man, we are so prone, our fatal flaw is like that passivity. And you're like, no, I'm going to take a step forward and do something. And so that's awesome. What is it about the workout that like brings guys together? Because it's a fascinating addition, right? Because a lot of times you hear, oh, we're going to have a men's Bible study. We're going to do this and that. And it's just some guys and it doesn't stick. And like most things just don't work. But there's something.
It's the secret. It's the secret sauce.
It is. Would you just, sauce. Yeah.
So the short answer is this. The short answer is men bond during a shared physical struggle. And so the reason why we do the workout is because that's how you bond. That's how you create a band of brothers. And that's why, if you think about it, the best friends you've probably ever had in your life, you being guy listening to this right now, was probably when you played a sport in school or in the military. That's how you made your best friends. And it's not because you had stuff in common. In fact, we bond all the time and make best friends with guys who are nothing like us. We bond through shared physical struggles. When you do 2-a-days, when you do wind sprints, when you run those suicides, when you run together carrying a telephone pole, when you bear crawl up a hill, when you do burpees till somebody's puking, that's how men bond, right? And so we do the workout every week, 30-minute rugged outdoor workout with things like flipping tractor tires and swinging 30-pound sledgehammers and doing battle ropes and sandbags. And honestly, it's really fun. We make the workouts, not stuff that you're going to typically do by yourself in your garage. So the reason we do it is because we've been bond. So that's the short answer. But I want to paint like a mental picture for a guy listening to this. This will illustrate this point. Imagine you pull into the parking lot of your church, you get out of your car, and you walk up to a fire pit behind the church, and there's a group of men gathering, sitting down to have a devotion, to have a Bible study. You sit down. How willing are you in this moment that you're imagining this, as you're feeling this? How comfortable do you feel sharing your big struggles that you're going through that week? Yeah, right? Like,
no.
You just even hearing the question, because you're like, I'm not. Okay, now picture this scenario. You pull into the parking lot of your church, you get out of your car, you walk over to a group of guys standing around a fire, and then you do a 30-minute epic workout together where you are, bear crawling backwards up a hill trying to drag a sandbag with your partner. And then you're doing sit-ups, decline over the edge of a tractor tire together. And then you're running a relay around the church parking lot carrying a sledgehammer, passing it off to your buddy, and you're doing this stuff for 30 minutes. You're exhausted. One guy's puking. One guy's just walking the whole time because he's 90 years old or has a knee replacement, so everybody's kind of like modifying and doing their thing, but you're meeting these guys and you're out of breath and you're grabbing your bottle of water. You walk over and sit down around that fire now for this devotion. Now, how comfortable do you feel talking about your struggles for the week? It's crazy because all I did was talk to you and describe a scene, and you feel differently from that first scene. And if you can feel differently, not even doing it, just hearing me talk about it, imagine how powerful it is if you're actually there doing it. And so, like, that's the difference. That's the reason why the workout, because that's how men bond. That's how we first connect to then feel like opening up and sharing. And Sage, this is the reason why most of the models for church men's events don't work. One of the things we say a lot in Men's Alliance is men don't bond over coffee cake, right? Now, I love coffee cake as much as the next guy, and I love a good men's breakfast, but we don't bond over it. So if your church men's ministry is a monthly breakfast, just realize you're not creating a band of brothers, because that's not how men bond. You have to have a shared physical struggle to bond. I'll walk into that coffee cake men's breakfast every month and never open up about my real struggles. I'll wear that facade in there, no problem, and say everything's fine, I'm good. And it's more like a business networking meeting, and I'll shake hands and say everything's good. And then I'll leave and I made some contacts. But at Men's Alliance, at that outdoor workout and Devo around the fire, you're not just saying you're fine. You're not just there for networking, making contacts, man. You are getting real, and you're getting real quick, because we accelerate that bonding process so much, just like is done at boot camp or preseason football training. Same dynamic is going into play there. So that's the reason why we do the workout. It's not because we're trying to be a fitness group. It's because, man, that's how men bond.
I love that. And for everybody listening, I'm just going to be completely open and transparent here. I didn't think it mattered. I really didn't. And then after the second time I was at our tribe meeting, I realized it did. And so, like, I went from skeptic to convert in terms of the value and the importance of this shared struggle. So, like, it wasn't that I was against it, but I didn't really embrace it. And now I'm like, wow, okay, I believe it works. And there is something about that workout and the connection that comes with it that, like, just floored me.
Yeah.
For lack of a better, like, I was just like, yeah, so I'm in.
I'm the same way, by the way. And, a lot of us on staff at Men's Alliance, we talk about this, what you just said. And I completely agree, man. If I didn't know about Men's Alliance, if somebody were inviting me to it, I would feel the exact same way. I'd be like, yeah, I don't need a workout group. Thanks. I've already done that. I was in the military. I work out on my own. I got a gym membership. I'm good. Right. Like, I would say all those things. And if I tried it one time, my mind would be changed as well. Right. So, guys listen to this that are kind of, like, yeah, I don't think I need that. That's not for me. That's for somebody else. Yeah, I get it 100%. I would say, just like you did, Sage, like, just go try it once. Go try this out and see how this is different from your average men's Bible study, men's breakfast.
Yeah, it's fascinating, the shift that happens. Now, I want to, like, I love the website, I love the material, and you mentioned the leadership training, which we'll get to in a minute, which is phenomenal. I love this phrase that you use in material and things, this idea of a barbarian ambassador. And so I wanted to ask you about that. Would you just elaborate on that a little bit? What is it, and why does that matter?
Yeah, man, absolutely. It's kind of funny how that whole barbarian ambassador thing developed over time and took on its own life. And we get the phrase barbarian. This comes from Romans 12:2 that says, "Do not be conformed to this world." And throughout history, the word barbarian was first a Greek word used to describe somebody who was not Greek, right? And so the Greeks said, if you're not Greek, you're a barbarian. And then the Romans adapted the same term barbarian to refer to someone who was not a Roman citizen. So it's always been a term used to describe someone who does not conform to the prevailing culture. And as you read Romans 12:2, you're like, that's what we're called to be. We are called to not conform to this prevailing culture. We're not supposed to be a part of this world. We are supposed to be different. We are supposed to stand out. So we say we are supposed to be barbaric. We are supposed to not conform to this culture. So that's where we get that from. When we talk about being barbarians, we're talking about being barbarians for Christ and not conforming to the culture of this world, right? And then, of course, the term ambassador, this is what Paul tells us as Christians we are. He says, you are therefore Christ's ambassadors, as though God is making his appeal through you. And so as a Christian, it's not a question of, are you an ambassador or not? The question is, are you going to be a good one or not? Because you are an ambassador. So if you're not prepared, if you don't know how to defend your faith, if you don't know how to explain what you believe and why you believe it, if you don't know answers to common questions about Christianity, you're not a good ambassador. You're not a prepared ambassador to be able to always give an answer for the reason, for the hope that you have. And so we kind of combine these two concepts of not conforming with representing Christ and came up with this term of being a barbarian ambassador. And, it just kind of grew, it stuck, it took on a life of its own. And that's how we came up with it.
I love it. And I love that description of both, because usually you think of barbarian and, as something that is not, you think of rough, crude, but
Yeah.
Absolutely. But as you described it, it's like, it's not, it's just different than the prevailing culture. And oh my word, how much do we need men who do not align with the prevailing culture?
Yeah, absolutely. You find yourself in a culture. Imagine maybe you get somehow transported into some foreign culture, and that foreign culture, it's full of sinful, weak, effeminate, ungodly men. Don't you want that group to call you a barbarian?
Yeah.
And I certainly do. I don't want to fit in with that culture. And that's honestly, we don't need to be transported there. We're there. We're there right now. That is this culture that we find ourselves in. And I don't want them to think I'm a part of them. I don't want to conform to them. I want them to think there's something weird about that guy. There's something strange about that guy. He reads his Bible every day. He actually believes that Jesus rose from the dead. That kind of stuff is, man, I'm great being painted a barbarian by that crowd.
Yeah. Set me apart, call me weird, call me whatever. But that's where the transformation occurs. That's where following Christ is. And it's key. One of the things I also have found fascinating is we'll call it the nomenclature. One, barbarian ambassador, but the other things that you use sort of in this process and progress and leadership development within Men's Alliance. Things like call signs, tribes, coins, patches. What's the significance of those things? Because I can tell they were purposefully chosen.
Yeah.
And so why those terms? What's the goal? We'll get back to the show in just a moment, but first, if you're a guy and you're asking, how can I be of consequence to my family? I would encourage you to pick up my book, Leading Well at Home, How Husbands and Fathers Can Biblically Lead Their Families. It has action steps to get you going in the right direction and help you equip your family to follow Christ. Leading Well at Home. Link is in the show notes, or you can go directly to Amazon to pick it up. Now, back to the show.
Yeah, great question. There's two organizations in this country that really know how to reach men. They have zero problem reaching men. One is the military, zero problem reaching men. They don't think men are hard to reach in the military. And two is motorcycle clubs. They know how to reach men. They don't think men are hard to reach. But then you get involved in church and you hear churches saying men are so hard to reach. Men are just difficult to reach, right? And the truth is, no, we're not hard to reach. You're just doing it wrong. Take a page from the playbook of some organizations that know how to reach men, the military or a motorcycle club being two great examples. And the thing that both of those organizations have in common, the way you reach men, is the word challenge, right? So the way you reach men is you tell us you're not sure if we can accomplish something. You tell us, I don't know if you're up for this. This might be too hard for you. You say that to a man, he's all in. He's gonna rise to the challenge. He wants to be challenged. Churches for too long have tried to attract and retain men by simply keeping them comfortable. And you give us a cup of coffee and a donut and a cushioned chair in an air-conditioned room. That's nice once. We'll take you up on that once. But why would I keep doing that over and over? There's no challenge involved in it. And so what we've done with Men's Alliance is we've created a men's ministry that actually challenges men who want more. Right. So if you're a Christian man who wants more, Men's Alliance is going to be for you. More spiritually, more physically, more relationally, more in all these categories. Right. So some just funny examples of this. Right. We have a monthly memory verse in Men's Alliance, and every tribe, and we're over like 400 and some tribes now in like 7 different countries, 48 states, I think, something like that. We're all over the place. Every tribesman, every tribe, every month, same memory verse. And if you don't know the memory verse for that month, you got to do 5 burpees, right? Now, 5 burpees isn't hard. Anybody can do 5 burpees, but nobody wants to get singled out and have to do those 5 burpees, right? And last night at Alpha Tribe, I called on a young tribesman, teenager. I was like, all right, you got the monthly memory verse? He was like, nah, I don't know it. Everybody stood up and did burpees with him, right? And this is a small, tiny example of a challenge. Learn 1 verse per month, or there is a consequence, right? If you don't know the verse, you got to do some burpees. That's just an incentive to make a man learn the verse. Even if you're on your way driving to Tribe and you're like, oh man, it's a new month. What's the month for April? I mean, what's the verse for April? I don't want to have to do burpees, right? Oh, okay. Romans 10:9. Got it. Think about this. So here's the juxtaposition of that. Why aren't churches requiring men to memorize Bible verses? Why are we unique in doing that? And why do most churches view Bible verse memory as a kid's activity? I don't understand why this is supposed to be a kid's activity. Aren't men supposed to be the heads of the home? Aren't we supposed to be the spiritual leaders? Aren't we supposed to be leading by example? If anybody at a church should be memorizing scripture, it should be the men, the husbands, the fathers. And so it's just this simple little turn of, just a monthly memory verse. This is not a big deal. 5 burpees ain't a big deal, but it shifts the culture. It shifts the culture from saying, this is a men's ministry where you pretend you're fine and you get a cup of coffee and you sit on the back row, into a men's ministry where there's a standard. And if you don't meet the standard, there's a consequence. So step up your game a little bit. And that's why we say, this is for men who want more. It's a challenge. It's going to challenge your leadership. We're going to ask you to lead a workout. We're going to ask you to lead a devotion. We're going to ask you to build a fire. So we're not just going to let a guy be a wallflower. You're going to lead. You're going to get feedback on your leadership. You're going to become a better leader. And so you think about all of our hundreds of tribes meet every week. There's a different guy leading the workout, a different guy leading the devotion every single week. There's a different guy building the fire. So that's just a lot of leadership opportunities that we're creating for men who maybe they wouldn't lead a Sunday school class. Maybe they wouldn't lead a small group, but they can lead one devotion. They can lead one workout, and creating these leadership opportunities to grow men as better leaders so that they can lead their families spiritually at home. That's the goal. The goal is to get men leading in their homes, leading their families spiritually. So that's just kind of an example through the one silly thing about, the monthly memory verse and the burpees, but we got lots of these types of things, right? So we create Brotherhood, we give call signs, we earn challenge coins by leading, right? And then we earn the Men's Alliance patch by going through our discipleship program called Carry the Fire, which is much more robust training. But the idea is challenge. You challenge men. You don't allow them to just stay stagnant, sitting on the back row every week, pretending that they're fine. This is a ministry that's going to grow you into a better, or I should say, sharpen you into a better husband, father, and leader.
I love that. And that's, I think it's so important, this idea of challenge, because in the church, we don't do that. As you said, we don't challenge men. And that is what we rise to. We rise to challenges. And as you've said in the material, and I've heard elsewhere, it's not for everybody because everybody doesn't want to grow. And
true.
So it's like, it's not a fit, but it's like you're not trying to make it for everybody. You're trying to make it for people who want it.
That's exactly right. You know what? There's plenty of men who, they might not admit this out loud, but they're just fine not growing spiritually. They're fine just how they are. They don't want to be real. They are enjoying keeping their little secret sins to themselves. And that's their little area that they don't give to Christ. They don't surrender, and they're just fine going to church and using it as a networking thing for their business. They're not going to enjoy Men's Alliance, right? It's going to freak them out to be around a group of men who are being radically honest. But the men who they're like, man, I want to be more like Christ. I want to get rid of this sin in my life. It's just got me ensnared. It's got me entangled. I don't know how to get rid of it. I want to lead my family spiritually, but I feel like my past failures define me and have disqualified me. Right? To those kind of men, we're there for those kind of men. We're going to free them up from their past. We're going to sharpen them to lead. We're going to disciple them to be more like Christ. A lot of it has to do with this whole, analogy that Paul uses of milk versus meat, right? And, when you're a brand new Christian, when you're a brand new follower of Christ, you need milk, right? Just like a baby, just like an infant, you need milk. You're not ready for meat yet. You're working on the very basics. And I would say that's great. That's fine. We've all been there. But here's the thing. We shouldn't stay there. We shouldn't live in that same level of maturity for 20, 30 years, right? We should progress past that. That was great for the time in my life when I needed that, but we should move on to eating meat. And I'm talking about spiritually, I'm talking about accountability, I'm talking about relationally. We should move forward in our spiritual development from milk to meat. And I would say for men who are wanting to do that, move from milk to meat, that's the kind of man who's going to like Men's Alliance. We're going to be there for them. He's going to love what we're doing because we move men to be meat eaters.
I love that. And one of the things you mentioned earlier, talking about this idea of apologetics, you're talking about scripture memory. Like, you have some fabulous apologetics material and training. I've gone through the Start the Fire course.
Awesome. Yeah.
And so, which I thought was phenomenal in content and the way it was explained. So for everybody listening, maybe they don't know the term apologetics. Would you just kind of elaborate on that? But also, what makes apologetics so important in such a way that you're just like, this is going to be foundational to Men's Alliance?
Man, such a great question. I'll tell you this. Yeah, apologetics, a lot of people, think it's a big, deep theological word. It's really not. And it doesn't have anything to do with apologizing, right? It has to do with making a case for. It's a legal term in ancient Greek. It means to make a defense, to build a case for something. We get this word. We see Peter use this word in 1 Peter 3:15, the Greek word apologia, saying always be prepared to give an answer for the reason for the hope that you have. That's the word for apologetics. So it simply means my Dave Goose Mills definition of what is apologetics. Apologetics is being able to explain what you believe and why you believe it. So, a brand new Christian might say, I'm a Christian, I gave my life to Christ, and it's changed everything for me. Great. That's awesome. Fantastic. That's like first base, right? That's the milk. But by the time you've been a Christian for several years, I would hope that you are a Christian because of the evidence for Jesus's resurrection. I would hope that you would be able to explain to somebody that we have historical evidence for the resurrection. I would hope that you would be able to explain to somebody how we know the New Testament manuscripts are reliable. How do you know that this book wasn't made up in AD 325 at the Council of Nicaea? Well, if you don't know how to answer that, then you're kind of still on the milk. part, right? We have evidence for Christianity being true. We have evidence for the reliability of New Testament manuscripts. We have historical evidence for the resurrection. And so a part of apologetics is just being able to understand why we believe what we believe and how to articulate it to another person. Now here's why I believe it's so important. It's so important because if we as the men, if we as the fathers, as the husbands, if we don't know why we believe what we believe, then we can't expect our kids to. And if you don't know why you're a Christian and you don't know what the evidence is for it being true, and you don't know, well, why the New Testament manuscripts are reliable, if you don't know all these kinds of things, then you're not equipping your kids to know why. And you should not be surprised when your kids go off to college and come home as atheists because their, freshman professor told them that the Bible is just a piece of literature. It's full of errors and contradictions. Science is what yields truth. And, you can have your truth and I can have mine. And even if there is a God, I'm sure all religions would be equal paths to it. So if you haven't prepared your kid with how to respond to those three statements I just made that are relativism, pluralism, and scientism, if you're not training and equipping your family to know what they believe and why they believe it, well, first of all, you're not being a good ambassador like we talked about, right? You're not being that barbarian ambassador. You're being the guy who's conformed to the culture, not a good ambassador. But you're also doing your kids and your family a disservice, or your grandkids a disservice, because, when we send, I think this quote came from Vodi Balcom, right? But I love it. He said, when you send your kids to Caesar, don't be surprised when they come back Romans, right? And that's what we as American Christians are doing, right? We're sending our kids off to Caesar, public education, and then we're shocked when they come back and they say that they're Romans now. Well, we've got to prepare and equip and train our families spiritually. So in Men's Alliance, everything we do is centered on leading our families spiritually. We're not training men to go be, street preachers or evangelists or pastors. We're training men how to do kitchen table apologetics, right? How to have these conversations with your kid while you're driving in the truck, running errands, right? And so everything we do is centered on the home. The home is our mission field. That's our first AOR. That's our first area of responsibility. And so when I think of apologetics, what is it and why is it so important? I'm not thinking of some theological course or writing an essay. I'm thinking about a conversation with my high schooler and preparing them to be able to know what they believe and why they believe it to be true.
And that's key, right? Because as husbands, as fathers, our first calling, the Lord has put that calling on our life to raise up adults, to raise up those arrows,
right?
In the quiver, to be of consequence for the kingdom of God. And I think men, either they don't know how to do it, they're scared of doing it. Like, you pick your reason, excuse, whatever. And so I love that you're laying out some foundation work where it's like, this is just conversational stuff you can have anywhere with them. It's not like formal, like it's not this high academic stuff.
Right. Yeah. We do a lot of demystifying, some of these spiritual terms for men, right? Like it shouldn't be some formal thing. It should be a 2-minute thing at the dinner table, not a 30-minute theological presentation to your family in the living room. Right. And that's what some men have in their mind leading spiritually looks like. They're like, no. This is something you weave into your everyday practice.
Yeah. Which is key. It's just giving them examples, showing them what's possible and how to do it. What do you think the biggest challenge is today? And I was going to break this up, but I think it's almost the same question. What's the biggest challenge today for men? And then is it the same for men in the church? Or is it different for men in the church?
Such a great question, man. What do I think the biggest challenge is for men? I think the biggest challenge for men is the exact same challenge as it was for Adam when the snake was tempting his wife, and that is silence. It's complacency. It's stay quiet on the sideline, right? That's the pull. There's like this gravitational pull for men. We have a lot of inertia as men, right? It's hard to get us up and doing something. But once we get up and doing something, it's hard to get us to quit it, right? Like we have a lot of inertia. It's hard to get us moving, but once you get us moving, it's hard to stop us. Well, men, especially American men, especially Christian American men, have been told by culture to shut up and sit down on the sideline. You don't matter. Your opinion doesn't count. Nobody wants to hear from you. And for the most part, men are okay with that message. We are like, great, fine. That's kind of where I want to be anyway. That sounds easier. I will sit down in a lazy boy. I will turn on sports. I will crack open a beer and I'm good, right? And so that's our gravitational pull, right? And that's exactly what Adam was doing while the snake was busy talking his wife into eating some forbidden fruit, right? Is he's standing right there with her, but he just kept his mouth shut. So we've got to overcome today the exact same thing that Adam should have overcome, and that is getting in the game. That's getting off the sideline, fasten your chin strap, and step into the game. And you're going to get hit, and you're going to be unpopular if you do what's right. You think about this. If Adam would have stepped in there right then and said, Eve, don't do it. We're not going to do this. If he had taken that piece of fruit and chunked it, she would have been mad at him. Think about this. They would have had a conflict, right? If he would have done that, he would have been unpopular. You know what he actually did by his silence is he was actually practicing happy wife, happy life. Just whatever Eve wants. If Eve wants to eat the fruit, I'm fine. I don't care. I'm over here. I got my hobbies, right? So we have to reject this happy wife, happy life, stay quiet, stay on the sideline, let your family do whatever the heck they want to do mentality. And we've got to step up and we've got to say sometimes, hey, we as a family, we're not going to do that. We're not going to go to that place. We're not going to support that function or that activity. We're not going to see that movie. We're not going to listen to that song. We are not a part of this culture. And more husbands and fathers need to grab that piece of fruit and chunk it into the woods. And you'll be unpopular for a season, but that's the courage that is required to be a leader, right? So leaders cannot try to be liked. And a lot of dads and husbands are just trying to be liked, and that renders them an ineffectual leader. If you stay quiet, if you stay on the sideline, yeah, you won't have any enemies. You also won't have any impact, and you won't be doing your job as the shepherd of your family. So to answer that question, man, the biggest challenge we've got, the biggest problem we've got is rejecting that gravitational pull of the complacency of and the comfort and the ease of being on the sideline and saying, you know what, instead of happy wife, happy life, or happy family, happy life, how about the phrase, let's do the right thing. Let's just do the right thing. It's not catchy. It doesn't rhyme, but it's a much more, life-changing, life-fulfilling, God-honoring phrase that we ought to be following is let's be husbands, let's be fathers, let's be dads, let's be men, let's be leaders who we choose to do the right thing, even if it's unpopular in culture, unpopular at our job site, unpopular in our dining room, unpopular in our neighborhood, maybe even it's even unpopular in our church. But we've got to start stepping up, fastening our chin strap, and getting onto the field because we've been on the sideline asleep for way too long.
Man, that is so true. And it's not simply how it affects our family. It's how, like, this is generational.
It affects the country, right? Because strong dads make strong families make strong communities, strong churches, and strong communities and strong churches create a strong country. So when we abdicate in the kitchen table, that trickles over to the entire country. As goes the man, so goes the country.
It is. And it's subtle and it's sneaky.
It's insidious. Yeah.
Yeah, it just is. And so, yeah, just being aware and being willing to take those steps and learning some steps to take really can, it changes everything.
It does.
So as we're getting to wrap up here, and it's tough because we could talk forever here, and I love this conversation. If somebody's listening here, any final takeaway you'd like to leave with them, like an action step, like a challenge, what would something you'd give to them?
Yeah, man, I would, like you and I both said, like we both agreed, like when we first hear about Men's Alliance as a ministry, we're kind of like, we're good. I don't know if we need this, right? It's the same thing as being on the sideline. Like it's a big first step to go to your first tribe, right? It's a big getting off the couch, going to try this new thing out moment. I get it. But that is what I would encourage men to do, right? And you start by just going to our website, men'salliancetribe.com. Men'salliancetribe.com is gonna help you find if there is a tribe in your area. You know, it'll show you what's around you. If there's not one in your area, it'll show you how to start one, right? I should say this too. Every Men's Alliance tribe is 100% free, right? So we don't charge, there's no membership dues. You don't pay to go. There's no charter fees to a church. Man, we will invest in you. You don't need to invest in us. We will help you launch a tribe in your community, at your local American Legion post, in your city park, or at your church. We will help you launch a tribe. It brings men out of isolation. It gets them out of their comfort zones, and it gets them being real. So that's the first step. Go to men'salliancetribe.com, find a tribe, or maybe you're the guy to start one in your area. That's what we're here to help you do. Last week, I just learned this yesterday evening. Last week, we launched 11 new tribes in 1 week. And those were in 10 different states. We launched 11 new tribes in 10 different states just last week. We're over 400 tribes right now. We're launching over 20 to 30 a month right now. It is spreading, not because we're trying to spread it. It's spreading because it's what men need. Men across this country and even around the world. I mean, we just launched our first one this month in Kenya. You know, shout out to Washindi tribe in Kenya. But we're in Budapest, Hungary. We're in the UK. We're in Australia. It's spreading because it's what men need. And men are waking up to this fact everywhere. Men are waking up. They're realizing that they're on the sideline and they don't want to stay there anymore. And they're wanting to be challenged. They're wanting more physically, spiritually, relationship wise. They want that brotherhood, the band of brothers. They want to be sharpened as leaders, and they want to be more Christ-like. They want to be discipled, and they want a ministry that's going to push them, sharpen them, challenge them, hold them accountable, and help them become the husbands, fathers, and leaders that God designed them to be. So that's why it's growing. It's because it's just simply what we need. It's like offering thirsty men water. You don't have to sell it. You know, you just got to taste one swallow of this and you're going to realize how thirsty you've been. And so, men, listening to this, go to men'salliancetribe.com, find a tribe in your area or start one. You won't regret it, guaranteed.
Love it. So men'salliancetribe.com, we're going to put that in the show notes. We're going to put the book link in the show notes. Check it out. It's definitely worth it. So Goose, this has been a blast. Appreciate your time today. So excited for what the Lord's doing through this ministry. It's awesome.
Thank you for having me on, brother. I appreciate it.